Hey there, it's Brian Sebastian, Movie Reviews and More, Women on TV.tv, and iTube 247 out of Tennessee. So, straight out of Texas, instead of Compton, straight out of Texas is my friend Mary with Pterodactyl. Okay, Mary. All right. So the last time we talked, we were talking about things that were going on. We've reached a really critical point where I think it'll be very interesting. And as that person who can read, you can see a lot of things. I'm really interested in what you're seeing now, especially with coronavirus, where we just got done having a full moon eclipse, and then we've got a retrograde coming, which I know is not going to be good for a lot of people. Where do you see things going with all that, and how are you feeling with
everything? Well, you know, how I'm feeling with everything, I feel like a lot of other people. It's like every day we're not sure what world we're waking up into, you know, because it's just kind of everything's pretty fast moving. As far as the external forces, you know, I think with the world over, I think we're going through a lot of shifting, readjusting, realignment, change happening for people. I think with the coronavirus especially, you know, I just really worry about at least where I live in Texas, a lot of people, you know, kind of never took it very seriously to begin with. Yeah. And now, you know, they think it's over. And it is really, really far from over. I feel like, in a sense, there's everybody operating on this sort of false sense of security, at least down here. You know, New York, it's different. You know, they understood, you know, better, let's say, or they took it more seriously. But a lot of places across the Southwest is just kind of like the hospitals didn't get overwhelmed, you know, the first time when we did all the lockdowns and everything. And so now they really doubt the veracity of this. And what I feel is we haven't seen anything yet. And that, you know, concerns me. You know, I go places here and it's like, you know, we're supposed to be, you know, coming to the point in Texas where we open up to 75% capacity in the places that are open, that you can go to, restaurants, that kind of stuff. But everybody's been operating like it's 100% capacity, and less do I see people wearing masks when I have to go to the grocery store, places like that. So it's alarming. But it's also this sense of like, you know, this is a big learning curve,
right,
for people. And you know, nature and life and the universe has a way of teaching us lessons the hard way when we don't, you know, learn it the first time, so to speak.
Tell the audience how you started everything, because you've been very, very busy. And I love the fact that you have certain days that you just like, on a Friday is like your day, because you got I can imagine what kind of calls you're getting. Tell them what you do first, and then explain to what people are asking, because I'm curious what's going on there in Texas. It's not going to be good.
Right. You know, so, you know, kind of how I got started, I guess, is where I should start. Let's start at the very beginning. Right. So, you know, as you know, because we were colleagues in Los Angeles, I was an entertainment journalist, you know, out in LA, doing the junket scene, interviewing the celebrities, all of that stuff, and had been very, you know, well, you're living it still, you know, it's such a all-consuming kind of job, you know, 24/7 almost is what it feels like. You know, we have that 24/7 news cycle, and it feels like when you're working the junket scene and stuff, especially with all the movies that you have to screen, with all the people you have to interview, with all the stuff you have to write, the audio you have to cut, all of that stuff, you don't, you know, you're just like going constantly. We're workaholics, really, you know. Nobody wants to admit that, or talk about it, but that lifestyle is really being a workaholic. And in the midst of all of that, one day I come into the office, and as I'm going to walk into the office, there's this stray dog. Um, you know, it looked pretty like it looked pretty dirty. It looked pretty mangy. It looked like it had been through a lot. And we didn't get, stray dogs there really. It's just kind of like, oh my gosh, what is going on? What is this? And I went inside, and I first had looked for like a collar or tag or anything and couldn't find one. And I went inside and asked, hey, did anybody see that dog? And they're like, no, what dog? And they look at it and they're like, oh my gosh, call animal control, do something. And I call animal control, and they in LA, they just weren't, they didn't sound that interested in helping. And what they do with the dogs, it just seemed very bleak to get their help. And I just had a feeling like, okay, that's just not the way to go with this. And I went out to the dog, and I, with a bowl of water, and gave it some food and stuff, just some bologna out of the refrigerator at the office. And it was the weirdest thing, Brian. I had this like moment, where I'm looking in the dog's eyes, and I just, made a promise to the dog. I'm like, I'm going to find your family, and I don't know, it just kind of erupted, it just kind of came out, of me to make this vow, this promise to this mangy, mangy, tired dog. And I went from saying that to the dog to going straight to my desk inside to going on the internet and typing in, lost dogs. And the search results, this website came up. It was like the first one. It was called FidoFinder.com. I don't even know if it exists anymore. And I clicked on that. I went on the site. I typed kind of what I thought was sort of a description of the dog. And, these different results come up. And there was this dog that had been missing for like a week or so, that I kind of felt like that could be that dog if that dog had, gone to, the groomer, had been washed, like maybe that dog really is the color of this picture of a dog that's missing. But I just felt like, I'm like, that's the dog. And I contacted the owners, that was listed on there. And, later on in the day, they came out, and it was actually their dog. And it was just like instant gratification. It was the sense of like, oh my gosh, I just helped do something that made a difference. And sadly enough, at that time, I wasn't feeling like what I was doing was really making very much of a difference,
Right.
And that's not always, important, to people. But, doing what I could to try to make a difference was really important to me, like my whole life. And that was, I was kind of struggling with that in Hollywood. Although I loved it. I mean, I loved, I loved the glitter and the glam, but
But
and that just,
there comes a point.
yeah, and that was just a pivotal moment for me. And I'm like, whatever I just did, I want to do more of that. And it occurred to me that, I did all of that just working intuitively. It was just like intuition that this dog, you know, had a family, intuition that I could find that family, and going to that website and going to that listing and calling the people. And, it just was like, I didn't really think about it. If I had thought about it, I probably would have gotten discouraged and thought like, oh, it's impossible. Millions and millions of people. I'll never find this, unite this dog with this family. And I just kind of felt like, the feeling I had from that, and just the feeling of, how happy the family was and how happy the dog was to be with them, really changed everything in a big way. It was like waking me up to the fact that, like, okay, the feeling I have doing this, I want to do something that I get that feeling from. That feels kind of the signal or the sign, you could say, that this is the kind of work I should be doing. And so, it's not like I became Ace Ventura pet detective or something. But I started saying, like, okay, I'm going to shift. I had always, since I was like 15, had a deck of tarot cards, had always loved it, and had always like worked with it, like personally for myself and friends and family, that kind of thing. I was in the Army, for 8 years, and used to do readings in the barracks for friends and that kind of stuff, but I never thought of it as a career. I thought, okay, who can do that as a career? You have to have a neon sign and a big, like, whole setup or something, and I just didn't ever consider it. And then that's when I started considering it. And then, by 2012, I started, after the Oscars in 2012, I started working full time as a tarot reader, because I could also do that online. I do most of my readings over the phone. I have clients, all over the world. And, it really is so fulfilling to me. I do feel like I'm helping people, and sometimes it's not about, I'm going to tell you what your future is. There's a tall, dark, handsome stranger. I'm not that kind of reader. It's more about, taking a look at kind of where you are right now, and if you continue on the trajectory you're on, what can you expect along that path? Because nothing's set in stone, and we all have the ability to make the choices to help us create the life that we want. I don't believe in destinies that are just set out for us, and there's nothing that we can do to change it. So to me, it's really fulfilling to do that. And tarot is a terrific tool because it's so objective. It's almost like getting a second opinion. And as much as we're invested in our own lives and the things that we're doing, the cards are not. So I feel like it just, we're presented with another perspective that a lot of times can help us kind of get out of our own way. And
You always had that ability though, because you and I used to always hang around before interviews, after interviews, if you didn't have to run, and then during the parties, we were always together. So I never knew you did that. Had I had known, I would have said, Mary, meet me one day. I didn't know that. And I think you knew I had a shaman, because I didn't care.
But you mentioned your shaman, and I was, it's kind of like, it's a funny thing, right? Tarot's been around since the 1400s, and yet, Hollywood's been a part of, kind of giving it this sort of stereotype. And so it's not like you lead with that all the time, unless you're hanging at a metaphysical convention or something, a reader studio in New York. You don't always put that out there, and so a lot of tarot readers, we call it coming out of the closet, just like if we were, LGBT, and had to, like, have that pivotal moment where we wanted to let everybody know, and so it's kind of one of those things where I was a closeted tarot reader for quite a while.
It's funny. Well, it's I love the story of how you found the dog, because when I think of you, I think of that story. Because I would have done the same thing. I wouldn't have been that elaborate. I would have been driving around trying to fight it. But you did it the smart way, and I never forgot that. But also, it showed an act of kindness to where led you to your next path. And I always like, good for her. So at that point, talk about the growth that you had and what are people asking right now, like the last couple months, because I'm sure it's increased for you.
Right, right. Yeah. Well, it is interesting. What it is like I notice themes happening in a lot of the readings that I do. People generally for the most part are asking about the same things they've always asked about. They want to know about relationships. It's always a huge, category of questions that I get. You know they want to know about their career. They want to know, should I buy this house? Is someone being honest with me? All the basic kind of questions that the tarot readers usually get. We're still getting those, but it's like happening in this backdrop, and in that backdrop is the sense of apprehension, a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, a lot of delays happening for people, So it seems to be affecting everybody. And it's not just, here in the US. I have clients in Japan, I have clients in Canada, they're dealing with the same thing. So it's really kind of, I think, the first time that I've ever seen like these sort of global themes happening that come up in readings. And it's just kind of saying like, okay, regardless of what's going on with, say, like this relationship we're looking at, it's being affected by this. So maybe you can't get together as often, or maybe there's more anxiety and stress because somebody's out of work because of the pandemic. So those kind of things are kind of interesting. And occasionally, people will ask, well, what do you think about this? When do you think this is going away? Is it going to go away? Those kind of questions too that we're kind of all asking ourselves. And the interesting thing about that is it's not just me getting those questions. I'm connected to a lot of readers because I'm the vice president for certification for the Tarot Guild. And so what I've seen is a lot of readers talking about the pandemic. And oddly enough, there seems to be a little bit of you know we call it synchronicity, or coincidence, that so many readers are really honing in on this August-September time frame for things to sort of, go away, I guess, with the pandemic. Me personally, I keep seeing like October time frame, but I don't see it as like it's gone away. I feel like by October, we're finally at the point where we're not as impacted by it because we've finally, learned how to deal with it better and how to take it seriously. I mean, that's a big part of it. If most people were taking it seriously, then they would be taking those safety precautions. And, I have to laugh because I remember at one point, I watched Governor, like, don't we all watch Governor Cuomo's, press conferences? It's must-see TV. But I remember at one point when he talked about how they were going to sanitize the subways in New York, and he said, I don't think we've ever sanitized them before. And so that's what I mean by like smarter. We start doing smarter things because there's a lot of things that we generally in our cities and our metro lines, our city governments, our city planning, that we haven't paid attention to, that we haven't taken care of. Like, yes, you probably should have been sanitizing the subways occasionally, at least. This shouldn't be the first time ever. You know what I mean? So I think stuff like that, we learn, like, okay, there's ways that we can create healthier environments. And I think that is a big thing that's going to make a big difference.
Well, I was always told, like you said, October, I was always told after September 16th, things would start to kind of calm down, or people would really start to figure out where we're going for the remainder of the year, going right up until the end of February. Because we will really know. And I always tell people, never mind the fall, we got to be concerned about the summer. And I still got to make 3 calls to Florida. They're all from Florida, saying, "Oh, this is going to go away by June." I'm like, "No, it's not. Where are you getting this nonsense from? Oh, it doesn't like the heat. It doesn't like the summer." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I just like
Yeah.
the people in Australia that, you know, that's nonsense.
Yeah.
Those are 2 of my phone calls today, because look where we are. Everything has gone up because more people are out.
Yeah.
As you were saying earlier, they're not doing what they were supposed to do. I've still only gone to 3 places, and I know what's pretty much happened. Kind of like you could see it in the cards.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's frustrating, it can be really, really frustrating. And this whole thing for me, it's really difficult to usually that like I have no problem being neutral, and it's a big part of my reading approach is that I'm coming from a neutral place. I don't have any investment in any question somebody's going to ask me, so I can just kind of give a very objective reading to people, and I think that is appreciated. And but with this, because it does affect me and it affects all of us, it's hard for me to maintain that objectivity.
Yeah.
But I've sort of and you and I are friends on Facebook, and early on I was signaling that where I live, this is a problem. It's going to turn into a big problem. And the problem with feeling like we can see things, or that we're precognitive in some ways, or maybe have some vision, is that it doesn't change anything. And that's really, it's really difficult. You could be shouting it from the treetops and throwing up every red flare and red flag and signal that you can, but it doesn't change anything. It doesn't impact anything. And it's the same we see with like the experts, the CDC, the WHO, all these different um you know kind of organizations that we give them some credibility for having some expertise. We still don't listen to them when they give us warnings,
And the warnings have
and
always been there too, haven't they?
yeah, and it's just kind of a thing where that can be very frustrating if like because you see that it's going to happen, and then you just watch it happening. And where I live, Amarillo, it became a hot spot because of our meat packing plants.
Yeah.
And the state of Texas had over 2,000 hospitalizations yesterday or whatever. We like broke a record, winning.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not a record that you want to actually claim your own, but it's not like they're warned, and again, it goes back to whether people believe in climate change. There's still some people that don't believe it, but I think you and I were at the same junket for chasing ice. We did that at what, 2003 on the melting of the glacier,
Yeah.
with the filmmaker putting cameras up. That was
Right.
20 years ago,
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I mean, and it's like we're being, kind of, everybody talks about this idea of history repeating itself. And I do feel like it's not so much that history is repeating itself right now. It's just that we're coming back around to things that we had an opportunity to address, and we didn't address them enough. And now we're in this sort of phase of the consequences of that.
It's like Thanos at the end of the Avengers Endgame, before they get to the end game, he sent all these other people to do his dirty work, and he goes, never mind, I'll just do it myself. So the earth has just said, never mind, I'm going to do it myself, because you've had enough.
Yeah.
That's where.
Yeah. I think that's a big part of it. And, I think that it's a big part of, what's going on too with racial injustice in this country. I think we've had so many opportunities to address it. And I think that, you know, it's funny, you know, when George Floyd's brother was testifying the other day, you know, before uh, Congress, I guess it was, you know, the speaker that it was the Senate speaker of the House was there, all of these senators and stuff. After he spoke, the next speaker was this woman named Vanita Gupta, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I had the biggest deja vu moment because I met Vanita back in 1999
Wow.
because she was so pivotal in helping us down here with the Tulia 46 case, which was a racial profiling case where they arrested 15% of African Americans in this small town of Tulia and gave them all like 60-year sentences for like
Oh,
drug possession, right?
that's right. I
I mean,
forgot
it
that you
was
were working on all of that stuff. Right.
right. And I thought about that and I was like, okay, it's interesting because, you know, with that case, you know, we changed history. I mean, you know, they ended up disbanding the task force. The governor handed out pardons to everyone who was arrested. And you know, I thought back then, I thought, okay, and you know, we solved something, we made progress, we all right, you know. But and I think that we've had all these different kind of moments across the country in different places, you know, it wasn't unique down here, right? Where a lot of us have gotten involved, have accomplished maybe what we could accomplish legally, you know, through the system.
Yeah.
and and then it's like, you know, declare victory and we can all go home now feeling good that we made the world a better place. Well, no. You know, and I feel like I've made that mistake in a big way because it's like there's just been this acceptance of what we can do, you know, through the legal system, and this assumption that there's not much more we can do beyond that. And I think that that's been a wrong assumption all along. I think that justice isn't just about legal, you know, uh, recourse. I think that, you know, there's just this basic idea that if you let any sort of systemic injustice, systemic racism, systemic discrimination continue, that you never solve the problem. You have to eradicate it. You have to address it. And I have hope that, you know, what's going on right now is the biggest step that we've had towards eradicating it once and for all, not just putting out the fires, not just going, you know, and seeing what we can do to get, you know, justice for specific cases here and specific cases there. It's the reckoning that has to happen, because otherwise, you know, what are we about? You know, how are we living up to our ideals? You know, that just, you know, if you get away from even just the concept of race in the context of all of this, and you just look at the Constitution and look at the Fifth Amendment, look at the 14th Amendment. No, due process is enshrined in our Constitution. And so how can we accept no one being allowed that? You know, if you commit a crime, you know, like you know, some of the folks in Tulia, yeah, you know, they were, you know, guilty of possession. Well, that doesn't mean that you can do what you want to people then. The cops, you know, do not have the right to kill you over $20. They don't have the right to kill you over $1 million. They really don't have the right to kill anyone except in like rare circumstances, right? Where, you know, they're being attacked or they're being fired on and it's self-defense. And for people who can kind of look at situations like what happened to George Floyd and say, well, he maybe shouldn't have, it's like, no, 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 no. You're missing the whole point, because it's maybe happening to African Americans now, but the fact that it's allowed to happen to anyone means that it's everybody's problem.
And the thing
And
about
so
that now is that everybody knows that it can happen to them because it has been happening to people. They just weren't people who had cameras or anything like that all the time. Now everybody's going to whip it out because now it's even more relevant. But if you go back and look at the study of 2016, that's the first year that they really started paying attention to it. Except if you go to Rodney King, where someone just happened to do it. That's it.
yeah.
It's been going on longer than that. But before you answer, give your website so people can have an idea how to reach you.
Oh yeah, actually, probably, I never do anything on my website. I'm like, meh, but the easiest way to reach me is to go to psychictalk.net. That's the website for the radio network that carries my show. And just to it's psychictalk.net/Mary. So it's simple.
And you did a couple shows on there. I think I saw a post recently. What was that like for you? I think were they interviewing you? I think that's what it was.
Yeah, I did too. A couple other shows. I did a couple appearances in like the last couple months. It was one of them was talking about fairies, the Irish fae. That tradition, the folklore and the mythology is really fascinating and something that I've studied. And then my friend Sharona Rapsick has this great show called The Magic Universe that's on every other Sunday or every couple Sundays. And we were on there talking about crystals, because one of the shows that I do, my show is called There's Rock for That, and it's on the first Saturday of every month, and I talk about crystals, and I really love digging into the history and the mythology, and what some of the ancient philosophers said about them, and how our ideas about them have changed through time. I mean, you start at like 300 BC all the way up to modern times with some of these stones, and people like Pliny the Elder, ancient Romans, even all these ancient Greeks and Romans who had written about them as well, because they were before modern medicine. People used what they could find in nature, so they used stones that they worked with. They sometimes ground them up like lapis lazuli, like the Egyptians, to use in makeup and just for all sorts of ailments and everything. So it's a really fascinating world with such a fascinating history to it, a lot like tarot. And every Saturday I do the Tarot Today show where we talk about different topics. Tomorrow we're talking about how to take care of your cards during the pandemic, right? Because we talk about the virus being on surfaces and everything. Well, for card readers, there's a lot, there's 78 surfaces in a deck, essentially. So how do we take care of those? How do we keep them clean? Is it a good idea to let the client, touch your cards? Well, probably not these days.
That's very true. I never thought about that. But I do have a device that actually cleans things like that I've got coming, which is good, called the UV box.
Oh, is it like UV light?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But all of that stuff is very, very important now, because I didn't think about that one before, but it is. It's like your car keys. It's like your phone. The simple thing like remote control. I'm always doing that stuff, but still, I didn't think about the tarot cards.
Yeah, because it gets complicated, because you have, let me just show you, here's a deck right here. But, think about it, Brian, it's like when you do reading, you're always shuffling. So we're talking like all of the 78 cards in your standard tarot deck. Every one of these is a surface, that could get stuff on it.
So what's that like to be going from interviewing celebrities to now you being that celebrity giving interviews? Did you ever think that?
I oddly enough, for whatever reason, at different points in my life before I even started really interviewing celebrities, I would wind up getting interviewed by like the local news or something.
Oh
And
yeah.
so, it's just kind of an odd thing, right? And so I just kind of, I think, I'm flattered. I'm flattered. I'm flattered you want me on the show today, like I think it's interesting, and I, I enjoy it. I really do. And I still, I interview different people on my radio shows. I still love doing that, but it's definitely, smaller demographic, right? There's, when you think of like, some of the blockbuster movies we covered and how, those are movies that are like, millions and millions of people are seeing it. Well, you maybe have like maybe a million people interested in tarot, and maybe, that expands a little bit more with crystals as well. But I like it. I feel closer to my audience, you could say, than I felt covering like mainstream, entertainment stuff.
Let me ask you this. Would you go back, since you and I spent a lot of time in movie theaters and doing junkets and going to the hotels and traveling, would you go to the movie theaters now?
No. No,
Now, now, now I want to hear from you why you wouldn't go, because I'll tell you why I wouldn't go.
yeah, I mean, I have found like, okay, so going to the movies when I was in Los Angeles and doing it as part of, my job, going to screenings that they set up for the press, that was incredibly enjoyable to me, because it's like I could actually watch the movie. I could really get into the movie. But a big reason I don't enjoy going to movie theaters is just a civilian, I guess, it's because like there's so many interruptions. People actually talk during movies in the real world. People are just kind of, and they don't clean
A
them very
civilian,
well.
that's funny.
Right? Get to your seat, the floor always feels sticky. It's just like, I don't know. It's just a nasty experience. Plus, I mean, I love being able to watch movies from home. I just watched Rocket Man finally the other day with my husband, which we, hadn't seen and had wanted to, it was like on the list, So I feel like I get to do it on my time. I don't have to wait for it to be in the theater. I don't have to worry about like people talking through the movie. And I can pause the movie, go make a snack, come back. I mean, it's just so much more enjoyable. I don't know. It's weird.
Well, the reason why I ask is now you may or may not know, depending what state you're in, you have to have a reservation. You have to wear your mask in. You have to wear your mask out. You have to wear it to the concession stand. But what, you're not going to wear your mask while you're eating in the theater because now it's airborne? How does that not make sense? And being confined in that, whether it's in the airplane or in a movie theater, or even a hotel, small little convention type thing, it's airborne now. It's just bizarre. So I don't feel that they have it right. And I do want to champion the Lemleys. And then we have AMC being bought up by Amazon, which will take a little bit. We have a Regal theaters, starting to open back up, but they're not, the theaters aren't doing well. Plus we have no movies coming out. So that's why I told people it's not time to go back yet. After September, yes. Right now, no.
No, no, we need to figure it out because I mean, what you just described, I think, is really like the problem is that there's no one good plan that is consistent all the way through. It's like everybody's sort of winging it. And I think that that's why we're having all these sort of mixed results. And I think
Absolutely.
that yeah, it's not like it's any you know, you're safe when you get your popcorn, and you're sitting there when your mask, you know, when you eating your popcorn and take your mask off. I mean, you're exposing others again. You know, you're exposing yourself, all of that stuff. So I'm just hoping, you know, at some point, you know, and I really feel that, you know, before October, by October, around that time frame, we're going to like finally really like light bulb, you know, it goes on like this is how we deal with it, you know, across the
I
board.
couldn't
And
agree
if
more
we all
with
do this, we'll,
I
yeah.
couldn't agree more with you, and that is so true. We got about 60 seconds, so talk about give the website that you go on one more time, and then what do you see going on for what's a general advice you give to why people should go to you?
Oh, to me. Okay, well, you can find me by going to psychictalk.net/Mary, Mary. Also, check out my YouTube channel, Tarodactyl, Tarotdactyl. And why you should go to me is because I'm going to give you that objective, you know, second opinion on things. You can ask me anything. We'll take a look at it all. And I'm just going to try to help you to make the choices that are going to help you to create the life that you want to be living.
All right. So for my friend Mary and Pterodactyl, I'm Brian Sebastian, movie reviews and more, women on TV.tv, and IT247 out of Tennessee. And we'll see you next week. And oh, if you see someone without a smile, please give them one of yours because we all need it.